Okay. All right. Well, that's good then. So I've got some notes to talk about our guest speaker. So a few months ago, we learned about the horrors of shark nets and drum lines from Bella Graham. I don't know who was here for that one. I think some of you definitely were. Today, we're going to learn about the softer side of sharks instead. Hopefully, hearing from our guest speaker today will strengthen our resolve to remove the shark nets. And I know that it's something that's really close to his heart as well as mine. So we're going to start by watching a video of a shark conservationist called Jim Abernathy, who runs shark expeditions, which allow him the opportunity to see these incredible creatures up close and even befriend them. Okay, so let's see what you think of this. It's about 3 minutes, and then I'll be able to introduce Tony to explain what you've actually been watching. Okay, Claire, can you give me a thumbs up if you can see that? Awesome, brilliant. Here we go.
Emma would follow me around to get her head rubbed. You would think she was the golden retriever because she's a very kind, gentle soul. She's very happy and somewhat demanding of love and affection.
He comes up and just bumps him right in the head, like, oh, love time. It's just a very special relationship. You can just tell that there's a love she has for him. She acts differently around him than she does everyone else.
It's actually quite funny to think about, but she's very intimidating to most people at first because all they see is big tiger shark. But after they see her playing with the crew and it's not scary shark anymore. It's just big loving Emma. It's very hard for me to know that there's a shark out there in the world that actually recognizes you. In fact, wouldn't you believe the story of Emma and I 20 years ago? A shark conservationist, and I've been running ecotourism charters since 1998. We don't allow anyone to swim towards the sharks at all. So the interaction is totally on the shark's behalf. The shark goes where it's comfortable. In early 2000, we had actually first started seeing Emma. It was spectacular. After I basically discovered that sharks are affectionate creatures, it was a game changer. In those days, over 50% of the sharks had hooks. I got this crazy idea that I would give the shark affection to try to gain a sense of trust so that I could work on getting the hook out once it trusted me. Over the course of almost 22 years now, I've had the opportunity to remove 4 of the hooks that Emma has received. I believe she knows exactly what I'm doing. Since 2002, I've removed hundreds of hooks from 8 different species of sharks so far. The last year is the first time that we've gone to Tiger Beach and actually had no hooks in any shark. Once the sharks learned that they could move amongst us freely without any concern, they relaxed considerably. This is a game changer because most people in the world believe what they see on TV, that they're mindless man-eating monsters. And the truth is, they're just like our dogs and cats. They're beautiful creatures that are sentient. They have feelings and emotions. Across the last 20 plus years, I've gained a lot of shark friends, but Emma is in a league all to herself. She's such a great shark ambassador, showing the true nature of sharks to the whole world.
There you go. All right, now you know what we're talking about. I'd like to introduce you to my friend Tony. Tony is the founding president of and life member of the Marine Life Society of South Australia, and his friend and mentor is Jim, who you just heard from on that video. In January 2024, Jim and Tony spent an hour with Emma at Tiger Beach, west of Grand Bahama Island. As a veteran of more than 3,000 dives, Tony says that that hour underwater with Jim and the tiger shark Emma will be hard to eclipse. So welcome, Tony. Thank you very much for being here.
My pleasure, Sarah.
I'm going to pop you back on the speaker view so everybody can see you really well. And I'm going to start off with a question, and then hopefully that will launch you into telling us all about your experiences. So what was it like swimming so close to animals that most people consider to be killers?
Well, as I said to you, the hour that I spent one-on-one with Jim, who was taking the photographs, and Emma, who was in my face, and I mean quite literally in my face, did amount to probably the finest hour that I have ever had underwater with any experiences worldwide. Now, Emma and I do have a history. I was the last recreational diver to leave a night dive where Emma had not shown. And one of the guides was just gathering up the poles that you've probably seen. They're just pieces of electrical conduit that are there just in case a shark does get too close for comfort. If they hit the stick, they get the idea, don't proceed. So he was busy doing that, and then Emma came out of this inky black darkness. And I mean, she's the size of a bus. and she went past me, and the only muscles that I could see moving were the muscles in her eye. Wow. Because the rest of her just had this inertia. And it was obvious to me that she knew that I wasn't Jim and that I wasn't worth her time to stop and interact. And she went over to the guide, made the same assessment, and she disappeared just the same way as she appeared out of this inky darkness.
Right.
So fast forward a few years, I was trying to work out, well, after a year of very successful immunotherapy from a very nasty malignant melanoma, how would I most like to celebrate that? It was a no-brainer. Let's spend the big bucks, go to Grand Bahama and see if Emma will show up. Well, on day one, I can't say it on public social media, but the guide was overwhelmed with how many divers, there were about 12, who had been through an hour-long session of how to behave down with the sharks. Emma showed up, but she brought with her 12 tiger sharks. So you have 13 tiger sharks with 12 divers and a guide that was really wetting his pants. I mean, it was an unbelievable arrangement. Well, the second day,
oh my goodness.
Everyone had had their morning fix and they'd gone up for brunch or whatever. And Jim decided to get in the water. I joined him, and Emma was there. No other sharks, just Emma, Jim, and Tony. Are people able to see this?
Not
image?
yet. I can share it when you're ready. Are
okay,
you ready?
well, I'm ready because this is a story I love to tell.
I want you to tell them this one. Okay. Can you see that picture, everybody?
Okay.
Yeah.
So if you look right behind the very last of the gill rakers, you can see a tiny little piece of skin that's jutting out, and it's got a little piece missing from it.
Okay.
Imagine that was containing a large hook that was ulcerating and causing enormous pain. Put yourself in Jim's situation. He's taken 4 hooks out of Emma's mouth before, but they're all around her lip.
Right.
How was he going to access
right
that?
Back at the back of her mouth?
At the very back of her gill rakers, right next to her throat. And because he goes with different clients every week from Florida to Bahamas, he turned up with a great big piece of heavy duty water pipe, PVC pipe.
Right.
The idea was that Emma, who had the smarts, would bite down on the water pipe and he would be able to put his hand through to the back of her throat and remove the hook.
Through the water pipe.
Through the water pipe. Oh. So they had a plan. And on the day, one of his staff made the mistake of bringing down a teenager, and because things like this can go wrong, it was just deemed too dangerous. Well, Emma took the situation into her own mind and distracted Jim and took him over to the coral reef that you can see behind and found a coral head about the size of a soccer ball.
Right.
So she went head down in the water column and bit and locked onto the coral head.
Okay.
To make sure her upper and lower jaws were fixed. and Jim simply reached in unprotected, grabbed the hook and showed it to her. There was a lot of blood. They had to wait for the blood to clear. When it was obvious that they could see each other, Emma was obviously very pleased. And every week Jim would visit and he would check how it was healing. Now, the significance of this photograph is that after 5 weeks, it had healed to the point you can see there. And so Jim felt that he didn't need any longer to open her jaws and inspect.
Yeah.
But Emma didn't get the memo. So for months, she would just simply find Jim and this mouth was open wide. And of course, that can be intimidating for the neophytes out there.
For everyone else,
So I know this is all about Emma, but can I say that there are hundreds of sharks at Tiger Beach.
Yeah.
Emma is by far the pin-up girl, and she is the alpha.
Yeah.
And as incredible as this might sound, the other sharks learn the protocols of how to behave.
Okay. I think, have we got another picture? I think we've got another one there. Is that, that's not a tiger though, that one?
That is a tiger.
Is
it? Yeah, that is Emma, and that is Jim.
Emma. She looks quite different.
And the amazing thing with Emma is that she can work out who Jim is, whether he's in his budgie smugglers with swimmers goggles or whether he's in a full-face communication.
No way.
And I don't know whether it's electronic or what, but it is an uncanny sense that we as humans don't have. But she can work out.
What you've told me before, or I've heard you say before, is that Emma brings her friends in and she teaches them. She teaches them then to be able that they can trust these humans.
Well, it's an interesting way because that's a very human way of looking at it. I'm not sure about friends. Anthropomorphic is a good word.
Yeah.
No, I was one of the first 2 human beings to actually interact with a shark. One-day trip south of this location at Bimini. It was a shark that had a huge scar on one side, and for that reason, she got the nickname Joker.
All right.
From the Batman legend. And funnily enough, 2 years later, I saw Joker with a friend of mine, and that scar had healed to the point where you wonder, well, why call her Joker anymore? But what happened was that I was on a private yacht and I knew a friend of mine was doing a hammerhead feed.
Okay, I'm going to stop sharing so everyone can see you.
And so I went down to meet him, and the customers were at the end of their second dive. They'd had an hour followed by another hour because they were only in about 10 meters of water, crystal clear. And so everyone was leaving. So instead of there being a curtain of 20 or 30 divers, bubbles, and all of the noise associated with that, it was just me and my friend and one of the other guides that was cleaning up all those conduits from the floor. Because hammerheads go in straight lines. They do not respect, after they've taken a food item, they will not respect a human being that's in their line.
Oh, okay.
So that's where those pieces of conduit become really important. Anyway, the point was that this was a dedicated feed, and I amplify this as a feeding site, whereas Tiger Beach is not feeding. Those animals come in because of sentience, emotions, contact, interaction. But the hammerhead site is a feeding site. And this shark, I think, had been watching what was going on just beyond human visual distance, which was fine for the shark because the shark can see much better underwater than what we can. And she was learning how to behave from a distance.
Okay.
And anyway, she came in and she rolled over and she carried on and she did all these things. There was no food for her, so it was a non-event. But what I didn't realize when I swam back to our yacht, which was 300 meters away, she actually followed me.
Okay.
And I turned around when somebody called out tiger shark because I thought, well, there's the only one around. So I went down and there were 5 snorkelers or free divers that were at risk when I fell very clumsily into the water. You don't fall clumsily into the water when there's a 15-foot tiger shark around because it's just an invitation for their natural curiosity. So I went down to continue what we had been doing.
Yeah.
And she did a couple of passes, but what I didn't know was our yacht had gone on the anchor chain, and the bait box,
Right.
which was like shark Wi-Fi,
Right.
was directly above my head.
Oh,
So
no.
instead of passing, as was in that photograph with Emma and Jim, at eye level,
Yeah.
and eye contact, folks, is the first, second, third, fourth, and fifth rule of good shark protocol.
Okay.
Eye contact was broken because she went above my head.
Okay.
And I followed with my camera around to see if I could keep viewing what she was doing. And I couldn't pirouette. So I thought, I'll catch her on the other side.
The other side, okay.
Well, in doing that, I accidentally hit her in the gills. And in a
didn't go very well.
fraction of a second, the upper and lower surface of my BCD had a perfect representation of her upper and lower jaw. And she took off with my primary regulator.
Oh, no.
And did not come back with it. So you can understand, folks, I've never put this up on social media because imagine what would happen when media gets that story. Shark diver, lucky to survive, tiger shark attack.
Exactly.
It was not a tiger shark attack. It was a human error of judgment.
Right.
And she is now part of a multi-million-dollar industry in the Bahamas where all sharks are protected by law.
Well, that's an interesting point, because we talked over dinner. We talked a little bit about, some of the negative stories from sharks, and how Jaws, the movie, just really gave these bad guys a really bad rap that has lasted and just lasted. So why is it important for us to know these things about sharks, that they're sentient, that they're actually thoughtful, that they're more like puppy dogs? Why do we need to know that?
Well, I guess at the guts of it is, why do we need a healthy environment to continue to exist on spaceship Earth? Because the ocean is far more important to us in terms of our oxygen and our survival than any of the rainforests of the Amazon or elsewhere. So we need to make sure that the ocean has an ecosystem that can sustain us.
Yeah.
Now, that ecosystem is totally reliant on its sustainable ecology, and you cannot have a sustainable ecology if you don't have the apex predators.
Yeah.
And some classical examples are out there in the scientific area. I'd love to talk about the South Australian example that involves all sorts of food chain problems that have come about because of shark fishing. But the easiest one to share is the one in Florida, because the large groper, the black groper, which is fed on by the shark population, the numbers are kept in order because of the predation by sharks like lemon sharks, tiger sharks, bull sharks, and what have you. And there are a lot of sharks in Florida.
Yeah.
But because those shark numbers have been devastated by trophy hunting and just regular culling, the survival of the groper has increased dramatically.
Okay.
Their food species were the cleaner fish that used to eat the algae that allowed the recruitment of new corals and other benthic creatures.
Okay, yeah.
So without them in the picture, the reefs of Florida are now just covered with slime, which is exacerbated by the pollution coming from, all of the
runoff and whatever.
Runoff and so on. Yeah. But the key to all of that was the over predation of the fish that kept the algae under control.
Yeah.
Why? Because the apex predators have been taken.
Were there. Yeah. Well, we've seen the same idea played out with many species. The introduction of wolves back into Yellowstone Park that changed the ecology there completely. And we need to look at sharks as playing that role in the ocean, don't we? That they're absolutely essential.
But close to home, we've got the Sandy Straits. Now, the Sandy Straits is losing its seagrasses in the hundreds of thousands of acres, or hectares, and we have the baited drumlining and shark nets in that part of the world. It's the highest take of tiger sharks.
Really?
Now, those tiger sharks have a pivotal role because while they might not be eating the turtles or eating the dugongs, the very fact that they are swimming past means that the animals move. which means they don't keep eating the same patch down to the roots and creating deserts like goats do.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's just because we've now got so many tiger sharks out of the equation. The turtles are there in increasing numbers. The dugongs are doing their thing, and the seagrasses are disappearing. So I guess we need to be
worrying,
better.
Isn't it? It's worrying. So we need
management.
to do. So what do we need to do? What do you think?
Well, I can say in terms of our economy here on the Sunshine Coast, if there's going to be a multi-million-dollar setback, it's going to be because of a shark bite that goes badly.
Yeah.
Either a category 3 where it's a shark bite with injury, or a category 4 that causes a fatality. Now that is not going to happen, in my opinion, at a patrolled beach with shark nets or baited drum lines.
Okay.
It's going to happen in a canal or an estuary or a flooded waterway. I mean, we know bull sharks can go way past the length of a rugby field in just a few centimeters of water. That's all they need.
Yeah,
they're like eels.
Yeah.
They will cross country. And so if somebody's thinking on a really hot, steamy day in the middle of summer, this water hole looks great, let's make a rope swing and go into water that's got zero visibility, that is where a bull shark could be bumping and biting because they could follow
so that's your problem. So how do we solve that? With education then?
Education, as far as I'm concerned, is where the money needs to go, because I mean, this is a soft launch for an ambition for Queensland to have in place before the Brisbane Olympics.
Yeah. That, by the way, is 2032.
2032. Yeah. 2032, I would like to see Queensland with the world's finest, world's best practice of human safety and survival in wild aquatic places. And this includes
Wouldn't that
freshwater.
be great?
It would be. And so the only way that we're going to get there is an education of those who are empowered to change the laws and make the policies. And it's interesting that Jared Blage, who is our local representative here in Kawana, he is now the Deputy Premier of Queensland.
Yes, he is. Yeah, we've had a change of government since many of you were here last.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, Donald Trump would have to be the world's worst shellackophile. He absolutely hates anything to do with sharks.
Okay.
Jared is a close second.
Okay.
But at least he listens and we can talk, and he is one of the many thousands of people here in Queensland that I would like to influence. So that
I want to hear that word again, because that's a word I don't know. What is it?
Shellackophile.
Say it again.
Shellackophile.
Okay. I'm going to have to get you to spell this, because
an uncontrollable phobia of sharks.
Okay.
Jared's an amazing guy. He did face his fears, and he went into the shark tunnel at Underwater World to mix it with the grey nurse sharks. Not a cent of that money. That was some $14,000, I think. It went to animal shelters, but it didn't help sharks at all.
Okay.
But it did say something about Jared.
Yeah.
Because his family goes to the beach, he doesn't go in the water.
Right. But he's a bit scared of sharks. So we've got to turn Jared Blais around somehow.
Him and thousands of others.
And we've got to start removing the drum lines and the shark.
I would like to think that some of our audience tonight has seen that short presentation and might be motivated to see the one that we presented at the conference.
Yes, absolutely. So I'm going to email you guys after, and I'll give you the link to this big video, which is absolutely extraordinary.
Yeah. If you thought seeing was believing with that one, that ain't nothing until you see this 30-minute presentation. So if you do the link that is being shared, otherwise my Facebook page is Dive Care Dare, a single word, Dive Care Dare. Dive the oceans of the world, care for all things in it, dare to make a difference. Now, pinned to the top of that Facebook page is the presentation. It'll be there for a long while.
Yeah, brilliant. But I'll get that to you, everybody. I'll get that link to you as well, so that you'll have it in your inbox in the next day or two. You must watch it. I actually watched it at the Wildlife Tourism Association conference, the entire thing, and I think everyone who was in the crowd, including Madura, who was there, we had just our jaws completely open through the whole presentation.
And because of daylight saving and differences between New South Wales, Queensland and Florida, Jim missed the presentation,
He did.
and he rang me just as the applause was being had
did.
at the end of the show.
Yeah, that was a
and
shame.
A couple of days later, he said, Tony, I've done hundreds, quite literally hundreds of presentations, just like the one we did for the conference. Never have I received so many phone calls.
How interesting. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, well done. You're such a good advocate for sharks and the underwater world. So I'm really privileged you've come to talk to us about it, because I think we don't really know, as a human species, we don't know enough about the ocean and the creatures that are in it and its importance to us on this planet. So thank you. Thanks for educating these guys. And you guys, it's up to you to keep spreading the word. And when I send you that video, send it to everybody you know. The more we get the idea that sharks are important, and not just important, but sentient beings, the more we can save them, don't you think?
Absolutely. And I need to attract the interest and enthusiasm of people who have skill sets that I don't have, because this is all about communication. It's all about education. It's all about influence. And it's about changing a paradigm that Jaws has a lot to do with.
Yeah. It is, absolutely. So would you mind if I put your email on that
Oh,
email to everybody? And if you guys feel like you'd actually want to contact Tony and be part of this movement, that I'm sure that would be welcome, wouldn't it?
Absolutely. I've
Brilliant.
closed my website down because it will be repurposed with this one ambition before the Olympics in Brisbane.
Yeah,
and I think it's a realistic
you've got
time.
a very small window of opportunity here, 8 years,
absolutely,
to actually make some serious difference.
Because the world will be watching.
Yeah. Yeah, and they'll all be here too.
And we haven't said on this cast, but there is credible research that says 14% of the tourism that could come to Australia from our key international sources choose not to come to Australia. 14% choose not to come to Australia because of our sharks. We need to turn that around.
Education can turn that around.
We need our sharks to be an asset for tourism, not a liability.
We do. Really important. Wow, I'm sure there's questions out there for Tony. Who's got one? I'm going to put us on the gallery view. So anyone who feels like they'd like to ask a question, go for it, Elijah. What have you got?
Two things. I'd just like to say that I love your work, because I feel really passionate about getting the shark nets and drum lines out of the waters. And so, yeah, I'm really passionate about that. And have you ever been to Heron Island?
I love Heron Island. Heron Island is a place where my students and I did the very first proofing of Coral Watch cards. Coral Watch cards are to verify what the satellites see from outer space in terms of how stressed are the corals compared to their normal health. And Heron Island was a wonderful, wonderful place to do that training. And you would know that down in the milky water on the other end of the island from the accommodation is a very popular place for the sharks. Shark Bay. And I went down there at every opportunity. So I share your passion for Heron Island.
Yeah, Elijah's just got back from Heron Island. So yeah.
And as it so happens, I know what the Coral Watch health charts are, because I was the first junior Coral Watch ambassador.
Oh,
there you go.
Well done.
So we have a shared history.
Yeah. That's awesome. Well done, you guys. Who else has a question? George?
Tony, so that process where you were taking people down to interact with the sharks, does that sort of thing happen here in Australia?
By law, it's not allowed.
Not allowed, okay.
So all of the shark interactions that I have are either done personally with no witnesses, or they're international. Speaking locally, there is one grey nurse shark alpha male that I have called Gorby, because he has a big blotch on his forehead like Mikhail Gorbachev. And Gorby and I got to know each other exceptionally well over a few years. Just 9 or 8 kilometres due east of Point Cartwright on the Sunshine Coast, very close to the western bank of that river channel, that glacial river channel that all of the big boats go into Brisbane. The water is only 14 metres deep there. And I believe it used to be an aggregation site for grey nurse sharks before they were critically endangered and got down to, several hundred individuals along the east coast. Now they're recovering very, very well. And in 2015, there were only 3 males there. Now there's about 40, and we know there's some confirmed births, and there is breeding happening there.
Oh,
well, on this
wonderful.
particular day, which was November, a couple of years back, I was with a charter organisation that was taking down first experience divers, which meant that they had their hands held by a guide. They'd never had a scuba tank on their backs in their lives. And I'm normally the last diver in because I do most of my diving solo. But I went down first to check that the anchor was safe. And Gorby came up behind me at the same time as these divers were coming down the anchor line. And I saw the whites in their eyes. And I had no idea why that was happening until I got a thump in my spleen that was enough to wind me. And then Gorby hit me with his pectoral fin as he passed. And as he passed, I noticed that both of his claspers were bloodied, which means that he'd had at least 1, possibly 2 successful matings. And I saw in the near distance a couple of female sharks. And I guess if Gorby was able to speak to me, he was saying, okay, I blindsided you. You know sharks love coming from the blind side. Well, you got me this time. And leave those girls over there alone because they're mine. Well, needless to say, those big eyes ended up associating with a very, very rapid use of oxygen, and they were all surfacing 15 minutes later. So I had 45 minutes with Gorby, and all we did, he was as close to me as Sarah is right now. We were touching occasionally. Remember, this is not lawful. We were touching, but it was the shark's terms. And we were just cruising up and down following his girls.
Wow, that's so interesting.
Relationships do happen, and it comes with eye contact, and it comes with trust and familiarity. And I was very privileged that my house guest at the time, who actually looked after the place while we were traveling, was also the charter operator's captain. And between the two of us, we went out to the same site day after day after day after day.
Wow.
And that's how I got to know Gorby.
Yeah.
And this is the same way that Jim got to know Emma.
Yeah.
So as much as I would like to think that we would have sentient shark tourism here in Australia, it may not happen in my lifetime. If there was a place where I think more than any other would be ideal for Australia's version of Tiger Beach, it would be well away from the island, but on the desert that is Lady Elliot.
Okay.
Because Lady Elliot has an Emma already present.
Really?
And it's just a case of whether we might like her to become the icon in Australia that Emma has become for the Bahamas.
Oh, well, watch this space. That sounds fascinating.
Yeah, I haven't talked to the owners about that yet.
No.
But he was the guest speaker at the previous conference.
Previous conference, yeah. Yeah, he'd be in for that, I reckon.
I've got a follow-up question.
Go for it, George.
So with Emma, she brought in her species of shark exclusively, or do sharks interact with other species of sharks and communicate the same sort of thing? For example,
you could have anything up to 8 or more different species of shark at the same time.
Okay, so they are interacting
in pecking order.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't say they brought their friends. Sharks are followers, and they will follow the direction and attitude and behavior of the alphas, and they won't cross that line. So if you've got an alpha present, you can be pretty sure that everybody else is going to be well behaved.
Fascinating. All right, any more? We got one more last question from Elijah. You ready?
Last one.
Is how do you know if a shark is an alpha?
Good good question.
That is an excellent question.
Yeah.
If the shark is by itself, consider it the alpha. An alpha shark is one that's going to take more risks. An alpha shark is one that has a huge life experience. An alpha shark is usually a female, and they are usually the biggest around. They are confident, and to some extent, they will be more trusting and less skittish than a sub-adult. So, for example, was it Mick Fanning got that bite in South Africa?
Yeah.
That was a sub-adult white shark that really was trying to work out what was going on. It wasn't really an attack at all. It was a mistake, and it made world headlines. But putting yourself in the water and a big shark turns up, you're trying to work out if it's an alpha or not. Forget about whether it's an alpha or not. It probably is. Eye contact. If you lose eye contact, the shark is going to take advantage of that. So eye contact is really important. Don't do what I do. Most of my dives have been solo. Go with somebody who can watch your back. I didn't get home until 3 o'clock in the morning today. And
he's doing well, isn't he, for 3 o'clock in the morning?
The reason why I went in the water at Minjimbra Island, and it was a bit sharky to go because it was very, very murky water on the fringing reef around Minjimbra Island. So I went to a rock pool, which I knew well, but I'd never done it at night. And I was being shadowed for 3 hours by, I think, between 4 and 6 wobbegong sharks. And they were coming up from behind me, because sharks do that a lot. What they were doing is taking snack packs from the fish that was stunned by my lights. And they were doing it. One would move in, take the fish, and then I'd move my focus and I'd go somewhere else, and then the other one would come in. And it happened for 3 hours. So there's a lot of fish missing at Minjimbra Island right now because I went with a torch last night.
It's all your fault.
It's my fault.
Oh, everyone, I'm sure that you're going to join me in saying thank you so much to Tony for that amazing talk. I hope it's changed your ideas of what sharks are and how we ought to be protecting them, because they're essential to us and the entire environment. So thank you, Tony. Give a really big clap. Really appreciate it. Thank you so much. Awesome job. Now I'm going to share my screen just to wrap up here. Couple of things I just want to finish up with. Since I've seen you last, we have launched, Wong and I have launched our tours of Borneo that take place in October next year. It would be lovely to have some of you come with us, and there are still a few spaces left. So if you're interested, just head to my website or send me an email and I'll tell you more. But that whole itinerary is there. We've got 2 10-day tours, one where Wong is joining us for the entire 10 days. So can you imagine having Wong ask questions of for an entire 10 days? That's gold. All right, so if you're interested in coming, that's something to have a look for. I also have a little bundle deal for Christmas. So if anyone's interested in having a copy of every single one of my books, there's a bit of a discount going at the moment. And you really need to get on top of that one, because in order to post them to you by Christmas, this bundle deal closes on the 15th. So you've only got 5 days to make that choice. You can break them up and send them to Christmas presents and give them to people that you love. So a nice and interesting way to spend Christmas. So that's me done. I'm going to stop sharing, but I'd like to thank you all very, very much for being here this month. It's been an absolute delight. Thank you again, Tony. And thanks everyone for being here. I hope we'll see you next month.
Thank you. That was awesome.
Thank you. Take care.
See you guys.
Yeah, see you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.